My name is Adeo Ressi. I'm CEO of VC Lab, and I'm here to introduce you to Decile Capital, a new fund of funds by VC Lab. Before we get started in what Decile Capital is, let me just give you a little context of what's happening in the world today. We see that worldwide, there is a renaissance in venture capital, and you have new local funds in large cities that are being launched, new regional funds all around the world getting launched. In many regions and countries, there are the first venture capital funds being launched right now. You have funds being launched to tackle industry verticals like precision neuroscience by practitioners who really understand the depths of that field. And you've got ethical VC firms being launched to tackle the grand challenges of the world today. And so it's a very exciting time in venture capital, similar to tech entrepreneurship in the early 90s. And we expect that there's at least 5,000 new venture capital funds that will be launched by 2025. And we're starting to see top talent all around the world being interested in venture capital. In fact, we have hundreds of people attending this today from all walks of life all around the world. We see exited entrepreneurs with interest in being venture capitalists, successful angels, famous individuals like Serena Williams and others are entering venture capital. Top executives from banks and insurance companies and top tech companies are stepping down and launching funds. You've got ecosystem leaders like David Alvo, who you'll see picture there. And then former venture capitalists at big firms are saying, you know, it's my time now to step away and start my own firm. So you're just seeing a wide range of people all around the world making the leap into venture capital, from entrepreneurship, from corporate life, from even venture capital going into starting their own firm, and that's just part of the excitement. But the challenge is that these aspiring VCs are struggling to launch enduring firms, and there's a lot of reasons for this. The asset class is inaccessible. There's unclear career paths, like what do you do before you become a VC? Well, we just gave a bunch of examples, but traditionally it's not a normal career path for someone coming out of college to say, hey, I want to be a venture capitalist. And then even if they did say that, which I actually overheard here in Silicon Valley, some kids talking about wanting to be a VC, what do you do first, right? It's not clear. The information's not out there. In fact, you can find most of the best information on how to start a venture capital firm on our own website, govclab.com. But when you try and Google things, you know, our website comes up, and then Investopedia or things like that, which really are not great sources of detailed, actionable information. And traditionally, training like Kaufman Fellows, which is tens of thousands of dollars a year, or VC Unlocked, which is also tens of thousands of dollars, very expensive, right? Or there's a number of courses like executive education courses at Harvard or Columbia, again, very expensive. So it's just inaccessible. And then on top of that, the field itself is broken. There's unintegrated tools. Like if there's something called the VC stack. You can actually Google that, and you're going to get these crazy diagrams of the 16 to 30 different tools that you need, from DocSend, DocuSign, to run a venture capital firm. There's limited resources, and then there's the vendors, whether it be Aduro or whatever, are overburdened, right? Because there's this influx of interest in venture capital, but there hasn't been a growth in the number of people who are supporting those venture capitalists. So the prices have gone up. It's super expensive. The quality's gone down. And so it's problematic. And then last but not least, actually, it's a complicated industry. You can't just walk off the street and be like, I'm going to be a VC and figure it out. You know, you got specialized entities. 3 entities are required for a US firm, 5 for a Canadian firm. It's even more complicated in Europe. the accounting is mind-boggling. You can't use a traditional accounting system for venture capital because every single investor, including the general partners in the VC firm, need to have their own general ledger. So, and accounting systems generally apply one general ledger per license. So now, an individual VC firm might need 30, 40, 90 general ledgers just to operate. And the deals are complex, right? You got participating preferred in some cases, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're trying to do at VC Lab is reduce the barriers to entry so that aspiring venture capitalists can launch enduring firms. We provide completely free training with a NPS in the 90s, a net promoter score in the 90s for our VC Lab program, okay? And there's no hidden fees, it is free, okay? We've got a completely integrated tool set that does all of the things that you would get in that venture capital stack, the digital signing, the CRM, the accounting, et cetera. And that is also completely free. And then last but not least, we do the turnkey support. So we set the entities up, we do the back office, we help you with all the accounting, et cetera. So we make venture capital accessible to some of these top aspiring managers that have really been discouraged from entering the field before. And we're right now, today, for the first time publicly, announcing the final piece to the puzzle, allowing us to be the end-to-end operating system for modern venture capital, and that is Decile Capital. So we now also provide a family of funds to back promising new managers worldwide coming out of VC Labs. So on top of all the other things that we do, we now provide funding. And our first fund of funds, as it's called in the industry, is backing the top 5% of VC Lab alumni, of which David Alvo is one, and you'll get to meet him in a moment. You saw his photo a couple times already in the deck, and he has happy face there, but others as well. But the family of fund of funds will include funds by geography. So we might have an Africa fund. It will include funds by demography. So we will have a female-based fund or a female-focused fund. And it will include fund of funds focused on industries such as AI. So if you're an African female manager whose fund thesis is AI, you might be able to get money from 3 different fund of funds that Decile Capital operates. So they'll have 3 bites at the apple, so to speak. And what this means is now we have that end-to-end platform that I was talking about. So we have the training, right? Again, that's free. We have the tools, and that's also free. And I want to just double click on the tools for a moment right now. We have 400 venture capital firms using our tools every month, and that's been growing. So that's going up. And they use it for everything from getting commitments from LPs to managing deals, et cetera. In fact, last month, over $46 million of limited partner commitments were made through that system to general partners around the world. And that's been growing. So all the stuff you're reading in the media about this doom and gloom in venture capital, we're not seeing that in practice. We're seeing numbers going up and managers raising capital and closing funds all around the world. Next in line, we have Decile Partners, which does the support, as we were discussing, to help you launch and run your firm so you don't need to hire a complex set of vendors and manage them, which can be very time consuming and distracting from your primary goal, which is to invest in great companies. And last but not least, we're able to provide you with funding so that you can then get some initial LP traction in your new fund of funds. And the interesting thing there is we're focusing primarily on new managers. And this is an area that fund of funds have largely overlooked in the world, right? Because a lot of new managers fail, right? But in order to graduate from the VC Lab Accelerator, you must close on capital. So 100% of the nearly 350 firms that we've launched around the world have either already closed on capital or in process of closing on capital. And that's our audience for Decile Capital. And that's unusual because, again, most fund of funds don't do anything with new managers because so many of them fail. And how that manifests, and I'll tell a little bit about our upcoming speaker here, is that someone like David Alvo joined the program in March of 2021, the VC Lab Accelerator. He engaged with Decile Partners to set up his firm and close on capital in July of 2021. So we're seeing an average close time right now of about 5.7 months from joining the free accelerator to closing on capital. And to give you a sense of how fast that is, it doesn't sound incredibly fast if you don't understand the context. The average new manager takes 18 to 24 months to get to a first close. So it's roughly 3 times faster or more of what a traditional new manager will take. Then he completed the close in October of 2021, and Decile Capital, which was just warehousing some deals at the time, invested in February of 2022. And so just to give you a sense, in roughly 1 year, a new manager who you'll meet shortly was able to take an idea to an operating fund. And in his case, he had a positive IRR in that time frame, making him one of the top funds worldwide that we've seen. And here's a quote from David that you'll hear straight from the horse's mouth in a moment. But we helped him make it simple to launch his fund, and he talks about how he targeted 1 million, but by working together and with all the tools and support, was actually able to complete a first close of 2.6 million, which obviously is much higher than he expected. And we're not just doing it in America or Europe, we're doing it all around the world. In fact, we've tripled the number, and this data is a bit old here. It's from November in 2022, when we had about 285 firms that we've helped to launch, and now we're around 350. We've tripled the number of firms that are operating on the continent of Africa, and by the end of this year, we'll at least double the number of firms that are operating in Latin America. Right? So this is happening all around the world. And all of these firms that we work with are working based on an ethical code of conduct called the Mensarius Oath. And so they have a higher standard of how they're treating entrepreneurs, of the impact they're trying to make in the world, and the things that they're doing and funding to make the world a better place. And that's all part of our mission to transform venture capital into a force for good in the world. And that's why we do it. That's why the program's free. That's why the technology's free. That's why Mike and I do these webinars, because we believe that if you take capital right now that's being allocated to things like oil and plastic and things that are just frankly destroying the planet, and you take that same money and you apply it to green tech and clean tech and innovations that help humanity rise above the current situations and transcend our state and become, positive contributors to the planet, that we can really change things for the better, for the planet, for humanity, and for everything. And that's why we do it. So if you want to learn more and you want to join the program, again, it's completely free. We just today launched a brand new website. Check out govclab.com, and we'd love to help you. Okay, so that was my little bit. Hopefully what do you think, guys? One to 5? You can be rough.
Yeah, it's okay. It's pretty good. Looks like the audience is definitely enjoying it. I'm seeing it here in the chat. And everyone, I noticed that some folks are starting to actually post questions in the chat.
4. I got a 4. All right, rate me, guys. We love 1 to 5.
all the folks, yeah, all the folks are like, yeah, a lot of 4s here.
We got some 4s. Anyone a 5? So one of the things you'll know, 4.5. Okay. Everything that we do at VC Lab is rated, as David will tell you in a moment. So don't be shy. We'll rate you. You can rate me. My feelings won't be hurt. If you think it was we usually don't do 3s either. So it's 1, 2, 4, 5. That's our modality. Either it's not that great or it's great. And we want, and then it's shades of good and bad, right? Is it 1 really horrible, 5 really great? But that's sort of we're going to always give you brutally honest feedback. So why don't we thank you for the ratings.
I love that.
That
rating.
Let's intro you with a rating.
No, I want to give you a 5. It was my picture was on your presentation more than in my house. So that's a 5, totally.
Well, we love you, all right?
And then talk about how Adeo ended talk about impact, right? And then you're focused on a lot of impact, right? And how important that is, right? It's like,
I truly love your mission of converting venture capital into force for good in the world, and you will always have my support because of your mission. So I really love that, and I really believe that, and I can actually feel it, that we as VCs in Latin America, most of the guys that have passed through the cohorts at VC Lab, they are also doing that. They're transforming the world with VC being venture capital, and they believe that, and there's a feeling of that we are actually changing the world for the better. So thank you for inspiring me with that, and that's part of my thesis also. So.
Yeah, so I can introduce you, but it might be better to introduce yourself, because you've been a successful ecosystem leader in Latin America. You're in Chile. You had a company, you've had great success, and then you decided to go in venture capital. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about your background, and then what was the moment that you said, I'm going to be a VC?
Look, Adeo, I was looking at the dates I met you. I started 12 years ago in Chile, and we've met the same day I did my first closing here and at the Impacta VC. So I started 13 years ago with a startup. I met Adeo, who gave me brutally honest feedback, and I was hurt at the beginning, but I realized it was a good thing to hear for my company. And I did 3 companies, 1 startup, and the other 2 ones I decided to bootstrap. I didn't want to fundraise because it was really hard at that time in Latin America. We didn't have too many VCs as we have now. And I decided to manage a VC, the most active VC in Latin America in Chile. They were coming to Chile. That fund invested in my first company, which failed, but we created a good relationship. So I started managing that VC with the mission to really understand how a VC makes decisions to invest, right? It was really hard for me in my company, so I really wanted to sit on the other side of the table and to understand that, to be a better entrepreneur. But being a VC, I realized that I could actually change the world and solve more problems as a VC that is only one company. So I wanted to, in that period of 4 years managing that fund, I realized that I wanted to be an investor, an impact investor. And to be the best impact investor, I decided to join an impact-driven company, which was Burn to Give, then Betterfly, which is one of the 3 unicorns we have in Chile. It's the first social unicorn in Latin America. And so I was part of I was the first investor in that company. I was part of the founding team for the first 2 years. Then I was at another impact-driven company or purpose-driven company from Latin America. And after those 2 experiences, I felt the need to just launch my VC firm. And I was on vacation. I got an email from you, Adeo. I applied, and I was accepted. So I just joined with the mission to create a VC without a name, without a thesis, without a team, without nothing, and to just help me create what I'm building now. So thank you for that.
Well, David, you know, what a success story you've been, right? I didn't really, I don't want to share your numbers publicly, but you have like, I mean, you've been at it not that long, right? Like under 2 years from formation, and you've got, you know, positive IRR, positive MOIC, and not just like a little positive. Based on what we were discussing before the call, I think you might actually be like the #1. You know, the good news is there are a lot of people fighting for #1, but you know, you might even be the #1 performing VC in the entire VC Lab portfolio. EHAR ironically is also up there. So you know, you set in with this mission, right? And I don't know, was it luck, skill? How have you had such great success in such a short period of time?
I think there's a lot of luck and coincidences in my life. I think what clicked me in my professional life was to decide to look inside myself for my mission, for the purpose of my life, and I really took the time to do that, and I think I found it. So starting there with passion, with everything, you know, having the vision really clear in your head, everything goes easier. And it's
so you want that's deep and profound, and I think that's probably one of the most important things you're going to say, especially at an event like this. So let's double click on that for a little bit. You found your purpose and meaning in life, and so, but you know, not everyone can say that. Let's just cut to the chase. So it's you know, sometimes I feel like I have it. Sometimes I'm not entirely sure. I'm like, but most of the times I do feel like I have it. So what was your process to get to that? And then how did it, you know, a lot of people are like, my purpose is venture capital. And then how did venture capital come as the manifestation of that purpose?
We are going to go into spiritualism, but I'm going to do it short, right? My wife was kind of lost. She didn't know. She was working at Coca-Cola. She didn't know what she wanted to do. So there was one astrologist who was really famous. He came to Chile like once a year, and I decided to, you know, take an interview with him and do an astrology card for her. And I said, what the hell? I'm gonna do it anyway. And so I'm gonna also read my astrology card. And the astrologist said, I don't know how to say this in English, but it was like, I was cheap. I did in former lives, I was cheap. I was like a bad person. I did a bad to a lot of people with a lot of power. And in this life, I came to give. That was the purpose of my life, to give. And what I had to do, this was on 2014. And in 2017, I was going to have enough money to buy a house. And so what I had to do is to give that money away. I listened to that, and I listened to other stuff. Obviously, I thought that was like really crazy. But on the date, he said, I received an offer to buy 20% of my consultancy firm at that time. And it was the same amount of my apartment's, you know, the first payment of my apartment. And so that hit me. Obviously, I spoke with my wife. She was not very happy, but I felt so, it felt so right that's what I was supposed to do, to give that money away. So he told me that I should think of what do I care about, you know, elder people, you know, people with disabilities or malnourished children or whatever. And during that process of deciding where my money was going to go, I realized that the thing that made me more happy in my life was to give away. I'm talking about like inviting people to my house, and donating. I've been, building houses for people, painting schools in different places. I've been doing that for my whole life, but I didn't realize that was the thing that made me so happy. And so, yeah, I said astrologist. So I decided to give it away. And during that time, one of my friend, he was a Kabbalah teacher in the US. So Kabbalah is like a mysticism of Judaism. It's like spirituality. It's basically spirituality, or energy. And we create energy. And there's people in this life that came here to give light. And there's people that is the opposite. And he read me and he said, dude, I know you for your whole life, and this is the purpose of your life. And we started building my spirituality around that, and now that's what I do. That's what I do. And the thing that I believe is the best. Do you know the ikigai? It's a Japanese concept. Ikigai is the intersection between what you're good at, what the world wants to pay you for, and what you love to do, and what the world needs. And that intersection between those four things is your ikigai. And so I built my ikigai, and my ikigai was to invest and support purpose-driven founders.
That is beautiful. Wow.
And so now I'm here with you guys. So building that.
I'm really honored you shared that story. That's a beautiful story. And it sounds like you found, and look, you're achieving a lot of success in what you're doing, right? So you did mention it's some luck as well, but maybe talk to me about some of the things that aren't luck, right? What are some of the things you've done that aren't lucky? And then we'll go through a couple more questions, and then we'll get audience questions. So before you answer what's not lucky, let me just instruct everyone. If you have a question, don't put it in the chat. Put it into the Q&A link, as Mike said at the beginning of the call at the bottom, and we'll go through everyone's questions in rapid fire in a few minutes. Okay?
Also, upvote the ones you think are interesting with like a little thumbs up.
Okay, so what are some of the not lucky things that
all right. So
achieve?
At my early ages, when I was a kid, at 6 years old, I started playing tennis, and I wanted to become a professional tennis player. I was 11, nationwide tennis player. So I got my discipline over there. From there, I was like, training 2-3 times a day. I was all day long thinking about, eating what I had to eat, and sleeping what I had to sleep, and doing everything correctly. And I think that discipline got me pretty far. Today, I will wake up, at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., meditate, cold shower, and do sports, the 5 a.m. Club, 5 a.m. club. There's a book of Robin Sharma. And so I keep doing all of those things. And I would say probably part of my success is around networks. I really, 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 really understand the value of networks, and I nourish my relationships. And I'm speaking with you all the time. Adeo, Mike, help me out here, there. Let me help you out with something. And that's not only with you, but with all of the people that I've been knowing and that I got a good feeling about them. And so I would say discipline and networks they have been the most. And obviously, there's one more thing around mentors. When I was an entrepreneur really young, I knew that I had to have mentors. But once I got a mentor that already did what I was going to do, I realized that was the type of mentor that I want to have. People that already did what I'm going to experience. And so I'm always looking for people that are in my next stage of my life, right?
That's so awesome. Can I just say also, the chat, guys, is beautiful. I'm watching people say sweet things about what you're saying and connecting. This is great. Mike and I were talking about like the type of investors that Decile Capital wants to back, because we have another talk for the VC Lab crew on Thursday to discuss like how do you get funding from Decile Capital. And you know, you just brought up a bunch of things that sort of, if you can match. So you said mentorship, for example, right? So one of our, if you don't take feedback, we don't want to invest in you, because like you don't have to take all the feedback, but like there's some things it's like, don't drive the car off the cliff. What? Like I'm driving anyway, like you know, so like there you like, and that the idea of being mentorable. You brought up the waking up at 5 a.m. and having the discipline, and we called that professionalism, right? There are a lot of people that, you know, they kind of view maybe being a VC as like an easy job, and it can be an easy job, but being professional and having that diligence is super important. And then literally one for one network, right? You know, you can't be a VC if you're not cultivating. And so that your story of saying, well, I'll do things for other people, you know, Ihar had this emergency and we're like, well, David's in the deck, maybe we should call David. And you're like, sure, I'll do it. I'm sure you have other things to do, right? So that was a huge gift to us. And it just makes us endear with you more, right? Because they're like, oh, David, he's awesome, right? Which we already think, but now we think more, right? So that's just part of fulfilling your network. So those are great, three great things. They correlate perfectly with our investment philosophy as an LP, right? What are some tactical pieces of advice? And then we're going to turn it over to questions, because we have a decent number of questions. And remember, but only 13. And what always happens, everybody, is as we get to the end of the thing, there'll be like 60 questions and we can't get to them all. So my final question to you are, what are some of your tactical recommendations to new managers to be successful beyond just the...
Okay, so one of the things that I learned on my founder story was to, every time that I got into an acceleration program, the acceleration program is as good as you are in the acceleration program. So you won't run an acceleration program like being there, I'm going to connect and that's it. No, you have to really take advantage of it. And so you really have to be active. If you have the possibility to have mentors, let's connect with mentors. If you have the possibility to join your teams, I remember my captain teams, meet the guys. I had the opportunity to work with you on a weekly basis. Every time you connected, I was with something in my head. Do you remember that?
I remember.
Every time
else, right?
Yes. And so and that's one of the things that you have to understand. If you're going to get help, take advantage of that help. That's it. So really do the work, and I would say that's the most important thing to understand. If you're here, probably you're looking for help, and if you're gonna receive that help and you're selected in the VC Lab, just take the most advantage of it. I took it, and I'm here because of that. And that's one thing.
Right? Well, thank you. And interestingly enough, you run accelerator programs. You're doing accelerator programs as part of your offering. So you
actually have your methodology, kind of. But yeah.
Well, please, everyone here is more than welcome to use things that we've done to improve their own offerings, etc. I mean, we're just trying to fix the world, not like hoard intellectual property or anything like that. That's not our... So we do have a good number of questions. Some of them are directed at Decile Capital. Some are directed to you, David. So we can just start going through them. Do you think it's a good time now, Mike?
Yeah, let's do it. So there's a question here from Emil. This is the most upvoted question. Should VC managers be concerned about signaling, meaning that since Decile Capital will invest only in a handful of new VCs, that LPs may perceive new managers who do not receive capital to be less of quality? That's a complete non-issue. All right. So number one, you should never, ever, ever, ever disclose who your LPs are. This isn't like a startup, right? This isn't like a startup where you list Sequoia and Andreessen on your thing. Like, no. Like, you never want to disclose LPs. So if an LP ever asks you who's in, kind of thing, You really don't want to, do that. Okay. Number two, we have a number of funds in the works. So at some point, we hope to get more capital out to as many people as possible as well. So that's also a thing. And then third, there's just maybe reasons why legitimately a fund may not be able to invest in your fund. You might be domiciled in an area that, say, we can't go into for whatever reasons, right? So it's a complete non-issue in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know, David, if you have any views on this being in the first hand.
I totally agree. You shouldn't disclose the name of your LPs. There's a few from my LPs that they are really like momentum builders that are sexy, and I asked them directly via email if I can use their name in some conversations, and I did. But you don't have to do that publicly. And yeah, we're talking about, you have invested in 6 funds over 10,000 applicants.
Yeah.
So it's not a big deal to not be like.
Yeah, it's not. And we've had over
0.06%.
10,000 people apply to the program, and we've done 6. We're going to do 14 more from the current
14
fund
more
in the next less than a year, but that's a pretty fast pace. And then we're going to have other funds. But again, the bigger signal for you is that you just went through VC Lab. Right now, LPs actually consider that pretty good. We've got almost 54,000 LPs in our back office system database, and which is most of the LPs in the world today. And they look at VC Lab favorably. Let's keep going.
If you graduate,
Yeah.
you will be the top 3.5% of the GPs that have applied.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy. So yeah, the top and just to give you a sense, last year we accelerated about half of all new venture capital firms. And based on the performance metrics that we're seeing, including things talking with David earlier and Ihar and others, they are definitely in the upper half. I mean, possibly many of them in the top decile, and I won't reveal much more than that. But Mike, let's keep going.
Yeah, a typical range of the dollars commitment that Decile makes to a fund.
Yeah, so the first fund, we're going to have different funds in Decile Capital, so there is no range, if you will, because we've only done one fund. The first fund will do a first check of 250 and possibly a second check of a second 250. So between 250 and 500.
What is the size of what's the size of the Decile Capital deployment schedule, typical commitment, and how fast do you commit?
So we have most of all the diligence that we need because people have been through the program. So we make commitments relatively fast. Like at this point, we sort of know who we want to invest in. So we come to you, but we also are introducing an application process if we miss someone by any chance, and that should be ready in June. And obviously it's for people that have been through VC Lab for right now. In terms of, we're going to be doing 14 deals in less than 12 months. So that's pretty fast. And the due diligence, as I said, we have most of the materials we need, but we do want managers to be prepared to work with funds. And we try to help as much as we can, make introductions and things like that, and provide opportunities like coming on webinars, speaking at events, coming to private events with limited partners, etc. A lot of our goal, though, what we're working on right now, we're working on 2 marketplace features that we're very excited about. And obviously the first people who are going to test them are going to be the Decile Capital investees. But they'll eventually be available for everyone because we don't want to cherry pick. But the cool new stuff definitely comes to the investees first. So the 2 marketplace features that are coming out, one is for deals and one is for LPs. On the deal side, we're going to have a central repository of top deals. You'll be able to contribute to it. You'll be able to take deals out of it, and that should simplify your deal sourcing. And on the LP side, we're doing something called LP Discovery. So we have a database of about 53,000, 54,000 limited partners. largest database of limited partners in the world. And we're going to start allowing, and we're working on it right now, limited partners to discover funds to invest in. And obviously, since we've completed due diligence and we know the funds very well on the ones that we've invested in, they're probably going to be the funds that are featured first before we roll it out more widely.
Will Decile Capital be the first check in a fund, or do we need to have some secured commitments beforehand? So you have to finish a program, which means by definition you would have to have commitments, and you have to also be doing a first close. If you can't do a first close on your own, you have tremendous fundraising risk. Like, you probably are going to have a very hard time closing the rest of your fund. And so you're like selling this model on this idea that you're going to raise this much and you're going to perform like this. And if you undersubscribe, then that really puts the model in jeopardy. And so you definitely need to be able to get to the first close on your own. If you can't get to the first close on your own, it's just, you're going to have a really hard time in general, so. There's a question here about mentoring. How can we be the best mentor? So I'm going to give this.
Get the best mentor. How can we get the best mentor? So, I mean, David, you went through, we have a program within VC Lab. So VC Lab program is amazing. It's completely free. If you want the entire VC Lab staff to help you, which includes people from Sequoia, top people from Carta, top people from tons of great companies, Wilson Sonsini, etc. We have a premium add-on, which David went through. Maybe if you could just mention the Decile Start, because you brought it up briefly. And then we do weekly or bi-weekly office hours with you, Mike and I and others, and we try and help. So
every 1 or 2 weeks, I came prepared with questions about my thesis, about my presentation, about my strategy or whatever. And you actually, what I love about the work together, you actually ask for permissions for the PDF, the presentation, and you actually change the presentation and create new slides and start typing things.
Mike and I go in and edit the presentations.
Yes, that is the meaning of hands-on, and I love that. Besides the conversations and everything, to see you working on my deck, it was great.
We can't do that with everyone in the program because there's tons of people in the program. We do it a couple times through the program. We will edit anyone's decks, but if you're in the Decile Start program, we actually, Mike and I and others are there every week helping you one-on-one. So you get one-on-one mentoring. Otherwise, you get group mentoring, and I don't want to demean that at all. That's a fantastic, again, a 90-something MPS. So both are great. Will Decile invest in any funds that have not been through the accelerator? So we have invested in one fund of the 6 that has not been through the accelerator. It's 444 Capital. You can look it up. We have worked with them in other capacities, so we know them very well, and that and we're powering them on the platform, etc. So I would say it's unlikely that we'll do another, at least in the first fund, but we're not opposed to it as long as we're powering the fund and have the insights and intelligence to invest.
Is there a minimum requirement for a new VC manager to co-invest in the first VC fund along with LPs, 2%, 5%?
How much did you invest, David? Just speaking of which, because you contributed quite a bit of value into the fund, right?
Yeah, between me and my partners, we did 8.5%.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's great.
We've been increasing it.
So look, I invested in our fund of funds, right? And so there's the question is, how much is the are the managers expected to invest? So the traditional number that LPs ask for is 1%, right? And what they'll say is, we want you to put 1% of the fund in. Now, if there's 2 managers at 50% each, they both contribute 0.5%. and that's paid by capital calls. So you don't put it all at once, you pay it over time. However, for me and obviously for David and for others, like if you have the money, like, and you're investing the money and you're making good investments, like you want your money. Like I tell us, like, how much money do I have in savings? Okay, I'm putting that in, you know, give or take a little bit that I didn't put in, but like I put a lot of my savings into the fund because I obviously I hopefully believe in myself. I believe in what I'm trying to do. I'm looking at the market, it's a mess, and I'm thinking, like, where could I do better than betting on myself with something that I know really well, and like I have a competitive advantage. You should be betting on yourself, right? That's the whole point. Like if you're not excited about what you're doing enough to put a lot of your savings and net worth into what you're doing, that's concerning, right?
One thing that I want to say here is that at the beginning, I started investing also 1%, and just to say that I have skin in the game. But for myself, I didn't have my skin in the game. I can sell that to LPs, but I didn't have it. I didn't feel that I was actually betting on this. So that's why we decided to go up, because it is actually important for me to have that skin in the game and to have the possibility to lose that money. And that triggers me to do more and more.
And interestingly enough, the entire VC Lab management team is in our fund of funds, right? Because again, if you believe in what you're doing, right, you want to have real skin in the game, because again, what are you going to invest in that's going to do better than you? Hopefully nothing, right? Like, truly. Okay, let's keep going.
What percent of the total fund goal should be the first close amount?
Now we have to go rapid fire, because as I predicted, when we started questions, tons of questions come in.
Before we start, everyone, just start going through them and upvoting them. There's 23 questions and there's 9 minutes left. So just, upvote the questions you think are the most interesting in the Q&A.
Okay, so David, you got to what, 26% in your first close? You want anywhere from 10 on the low end to in the 20s is good. And obviously if you can get higher than the 20s, a lot of LPs consider a close in the 20s to be a super big success. A close in the 10s, like 10 to 20% is fine. And anything above 20 something percent is considered rather good.
Awesome. What's the best practice for foregoing salary or taking very low salary in the fund? I mean, you're not going to
make ask the David, you're going through it right now, right? You're not making, you make some money, right? But you're not rolling in cash.
My salary is not making me rich. That's true. But yeah, this is a long-term business, right? So if you can make a little bit less now and more later, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. So fund one.
I'm in Latin America, so here is cheaper to live. So it's not as in the US.
Fund one is not where you make money on management fees, just FY. So if you're thinking like, I'm going to make a great living being a VC, no. Fund one is like an MVP. And so usually by the time you get to fund two, you have money coming in from fund one and money coming in from fund two. And at that point, you have a living salary. And by fund three, you start actually being able to make some decent money, but it's usually like 6 years, 4 years, 4 to 6 years to fund three. So
actually we're investing in the management company. Yeah.
That's another thing you can do. You can take investment in the Manco, you can take investment into the GP to get some money into you personally. Let's keep going.
Yeah, what happened to the VC Lab cohort members who didn't close their first fund on their own? Again, folks usually withdraw from the program. There's reviews in the process, and then they come back to a future cohort when they have a better network and are ready to go out and do a fund, and that happens all the time.
Yeah, so we start with about 300 and change people, human beings, and we'll finish with 100 and change. So only about a third make it to the end, a little more, but in that range. And it's not like, it's not just if they, I had a guy that I really liked today say, you know, I don't want to be a VC, right? He literally wrote a really long, kind of nice thing. He's like, put a lot of thought into it, and I've been working on it now for a while, and I just don't think it's the right thing for me. And that's okay. Like, you're gonna, VC Lab is gonna help you realize if you want to be a VC, if you're good at being a VC, and all this stuff. And some people realize they don't want to be, and that's perfectly acceptable outcome.
So we have a hard stop here in 5 minutes, so we'll do maybe 2 more questions. You know, would Decile invest in metaverse or just AI? You know, we're backing managers versus like necessarily just like theses for, especially for this first one. So sure, if there's like a metaverse fund that makes a lot of sense, then we would definitely take a look at it.
There's a bunch of good questions we could move through quickly. There's one about cohort 1 being merged, crypto 1 being merged with cohort 11. And so what we did there is we had actually very good turnout for crypto 1. We had I think 300 or 400 people had applied, which is certainly more than I had expected. And the timing was that they were going to largely overlap anyway. And we, in cohort 10, which is running right now, we did a track for emerging managers that I would say has been very successful. So we said, wait a minute, why are we launching a dedicated program for crypto when we could do a track in cohort 11, which is going really well in cohort 10 for emerging managers? And that was our thought process. So
yeah, that way you can get the benefit of the whole community and also just the lessons and everything versus just being isolated out. So it's actually to your benefit. That's the reason we're doing it.
Right. So, you know, you could be with 60 other firms in a dedicated crypto cohort, or a few hundred firms in the larger cohort. And as Mike said, that networking and that's just better.
What do you think about rolling funds? They suck.
Yeah, don't do that. Like, look, it's in AngelList has made a number of innovations in the world, syndicates, rolling funds, etc. They are for what I would call prosumers, like part-time, night and weekend. Like, you don't want a prosumer to do brain surgery on you, right? You're like, oh, you know, I'm a part-time brain surgeon. I come in, you know, I only practice on weekends, right? So if you want to be a prosumer investor, the AngelList platform, rolling funds, syndicates, etc., is great, and we strongly recommend it. If you want to be a professional venture capitalist, then that's VC Lab, right? That's the difference.
What is your plan with investing in funds from Africa, and are you supporting more VC firms?
Absolutely, we're excited. In fact, we are in due diligence with 2 firms in Africa right now to back their funds. We're completely bullish on it. We're bullish on Latin America, clearly. In fact, I think of the 6 funds are 3 in Latin America, Mike, or at least two for sure.
2 for sure, possibly 3.
Yeah. So we got we're bullish on the global side of venture. We you know, obviously America is amazing, Europe's amazing. But Latin America is amazing, Africa is amazing, Asia is amazing. We expect to have funds in all those regions and more. What do you think about VC studios? We love VC studios. I don't know, we haven't had one for the fund of funds yet, but I would say at least 10 to 15% of our program are venture studios. We've published an article about it. If you want to pop that in the chat quickly, Mike, we got 2 minutes left. So about how to set them up correctly. Generally speaking, you can set one up without a fund. However, most people end up starting a fund when you have a venture studio. So we recommend just coming out the gate with the venture studio and the fund. We don't do venture debt and other things is the next question from David. So we're not traditional venture models for sure. But venture debt really isn't venture capital. It's it's venture debt, right? So we're doing venture capital and sort of interesting derivatives of venture capital, which is again not venture debt. Is Decile looking for 20% carry?
Final question.
Oh, let's see.
David has a hard stop, so we have to end right now. So maybe we could stop with this. David, do you have any final like words of advice for everybody here that's thinking about starting a VC journey?
Yeah, so I don't know where to start, but I would say the best thing that I did during this process is to take advantage of momentum. And once, you know, open conversations with hundreds of potential LPs, or I don't know, thousands, as much as you can, and you will have a good momentum. You know, there's way to do it that with warehousing. You can start helping founders, and they give you an opportunity to be part of the deal, and you're co-investing with Sequoia or whatever. And so there's going to be a good thing about you and your fund, and you need to take advantage of that, and you know, move that along and focus on fundraising. About focus on fundraising, that's another thing that I did. This is one I did wrong, is that I after my first close, I started building the whole strategy for the fund, and I've lose the focus of fundraising, and so I got a few months without fundraising, and that was not pretty good. So if you're building your fund, you know, first come first you fundraise, then you invest, then you support, and then you know, exit. And so let's do first things first, I would say.
So with that said, in closing, everyone, Mike and I and the whole VC Lab community are here to help, right? We want to see venture capital transform the world into a better place by investing in things that matter. That's again why the VC Lab program is free. That's again why our software is all free, why we have the fund of funds, why we do everything that we do. If you have a question that we weren't able to get to, go to LinkedIn. I'll post something there, and you can just ask a question in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer it today and try and help however we can. Because again, Mike, myself, the whole VC Lab team, and the whole VC Lab community are here to help. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us,
you,
David. We really appreciate having you on this call. Thank you, everyone.
I'm on LinkedIn if you want to get a piece of advice from me or whatever. Yeah, I'm open always to help.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.